What is happening, everybody? All right, so huge news just got dropped on us a couple of days about the new 8th generation Corvette. Now, I can't tell you guys how excited I am about this new mid-engine platform for the Corvette. Personally, I think it's a long time coming. And Zora Artis Duntoff's dream was to always have that mid-engine platform for that American supercar. The absolute best that America could give to the world, and we're finally getting it. Again, super stoked to be chatting about this. I feel like this has been a long time coming. This should have happened with the C7. Look, the Corvette has run its course as a front engine rear drive car. You can only make that platform last for so long, and then you've got to evolve. Take a look at everything that's coming from overseas. Anything that is considered a supercar, anything that's going to be featured on YouTube from over there is going to be a mid-engine platform. You can talk about the 550 Ferraris. You can talk about whatever other forgettable front engine, rear drive, supercar, hypercar, or what have you. But every single one that's relevant is running a mid-engine platform with a dual clutch transmission. All of them are. It's about time America finally got with the program and put something on the ground on four wheels that can actually compete with the likes of what the Euros are putting out without having to shell out the cost of a very respectable home here in the States. Look at what the Corvette is going to be going up against. First of all, domestically, the Ford GT. Look, guys, I'm not going to put these two cars in the same bag, but I will say this. Both of them mid-engine, both of them exceptionally strong performing cars, with the big nod going to the Corvette because you can buy 10 of them basically for about the cost of what one of those Ford GTs will go for. That's right, the new Vette is going to chime in just south of $60,000. Let me repeat that. Mid-engine, ultra high performance American supercar is going to check in for under $60,000. That is absolutely crazy. Try putting that up against the likes of anything from the European nations that are putting out these supercars, and you'll find out pretty quickly that you cannot even get into the dealership. You can't even put a down payment on one of those cars for the amount of money that the Corvette is going to cost. So, from that point of view, the Corvette is an amazing value given its performance. And so far, the performance envelope that we're being told, 0 to 60, just south of 3 seconds. I don't know if that was on a prepared drag strip or if that was on hot asphalt, but I can tell you either way, that car will be screaming fast. And it is not going to matter that it's got the DSG type transmission in this respect, because everybody else is using that type of transmission and seemingly getting along just fine. But here comes some problems that I see. First issue, DSG style transmission clutches don't like being driven daily. And for that type of money and for that type of investment that you're going to be getting into as far as a DSG trans, be on the lookout for some issues with that transmission. However, I don't know what the status is with everybody else from the Euro blocks, but it seems to me that they seem to be getting along just fine with their lighter weight supercars running that transmission. However, I have heard of clutch replacement intervals in the 30,000 mile range, maybe as much as 40,000 miles. They do certainly wear out much more quickly because you do not have a fluid coupler between your engine and your automatic transmission. Hill starts are going to be murder on those cars. City driving is going to be a complete disaster for those clutches. But if you can look past that and just consider that as part of the cost of admission, so to speak, then you will be sitting very pretty with the new Corvette. And again, right now I'm just talking about price, value, and performance. That thing is going to absolutely rule the roost. And I'll tell you something else. They will sell every single one of those cars that they make just in base trim. So let's talk about the engine for a minute. Basically, it's an LT2 is I believe the nomenclature that they're going to be using for this thing. Looks like it's going to be a direct injected 6.2 liter making 495 horsepower. Wanted to say 6, didn't I? But it's not. This is the naturally aspirated version with seemingly more of these types of engines to come, whether it's going to be a 4-valve dual overhead cam upgrade is what I've heard, as well as possibly a Z06 type variant. So anyway, that is going to be your power plant. Now, for the first part of this video, I don't really want to get into any criticisms. I want to put out nothing but positive vibes, nothing but good, good feelings, goodwill, the whole bit towards this car. I'm totally hoping that it does great. But it's not going to take me too long to start to devolve into some pretty serious criticisms that I have for this car. But let's check in, see who all's in right now. I want to make sure I say hi because we are doing a live chat for this one. Slick550 saying, here we go, I like it. Michael Corleone saying, yes, part 2 tonight, got the flex, I love it. We are lucky being a former vet enthusiast. I've been waiting for Mason's take on this. Thank you very much. Still got the shirt, brother. Symphonic saying, I'm skipping the C7, save up for a few years and get a C8. Can't wait. I highly suggest that. Christian saying, hey, B. Mason, I'm not a Corvette fan. Never have been, but the C8 is officially the first one I've taken a serious interest in. Can't wait to see what the Z06 is going to have in store. Absolutely. Chris is saying, I'm looking thinner. Man, I'm hoping so. I'm spending enough time in the gym, back at it. So, yeah, hopefully we're going to be dropping a little bit of weight. And I am just fresh out of the gym, so I am still sweating because it's hotter than hell out here. Symphonic saying he's happy that they still kept a small block. White Knuckles saying, what up, B? What up, man? William Harmon saying, hey, Mason, love the show. Thank you very much. Dr. Diffs in the house saying, can't wait to get my hands on one. Already been looking at them. The price is right and I'm in my budget range, and I like that. Fast Man's checking in. Hey, Brian, what's up, Fast Man? So, oh, goodness. Sorry about that, guys. It is super hot out here. So let's talk about the Vette just in general. First of all, let's put the Vette into context real quickly. So sub $60,000 for a car that's going to go 0 to 60 in a claimed sub 3-second range. That's all fine and good. Again, the issue with the Corvette for me becomes warrantability with that dual clutch transmission. And also, how will that car take to modification? Because, guys, you got to remember that the LS platform, whether it's an LT variant or the LS in general, has been the darling of the aftermarket, only nearly closely followed by the Coyote. You've got to remember that people are going to want to get their hands on this car and start throwing mods at it immediately. How well will that transmission hold up to the modifications that people are going to want to throw at it? I guess only time will tell, but as soon as people start getting their hands on those cars and putting really sticky tires on them, we're going to see how well they perform at the drag strip. Something tells me it's going to do very well, but for how long, I'm really not sure, and that's the big wild card. That's your trump card here. How will that transmission hold together? And by the way, bit of a sidebar here. We can't talk about the new Vette unless we're talking about the GT500 as well, because we've got them both coming out at the same time. Where I see the Vette completely winning in this is in the layout, the weight of the vehicle, the power level of the vehicle, and with that dual clutch transmission. I think it's going to suit that car very well. Not a ton of torque, high winding LT2. That thing is going to spin high. It's not going to put a whole lot of load on those clutches as opposed to the Mustang. You got to remember that that GT500 is, number one, it's going to be heavy, and number two, and probably more to the point, when you're talking about that Mustang, you're talking about a car that's not, well, again, saying heavy is kind of an understatement, but it's going to drop a lot more bottom end torque through that transmission than the Vette will. That's going to be the thing that cooks clutches even more quickly with that Mustang. So again, durability comes into question with both platforms. I just think it's interesting that both manufacturers are coming out with a DSG style transmission for their flagship supercars at the same time. Meanwhile, Mopar is just hanging back with their old school torque converter automatics, which, by the way, seem to be doing A-OK, and a lot of those other European high-end cars are also using the ZF automatics and not having any issues, and are praised and loved by every journo that runs one of them. So that dual clutch is going to have pretty big shoes to fill just by comparison. If we're talking transmissions and durability, I'm here to tell you that they're going to have to do a lot of homework to keep up with the likes of the current run of these torque converter style automatics. So in saying that, let me get in and make sure I'm not missing anybody in the live chat here. Dr. Div saying I need some AC in here. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. White Knuckles saying he's looking into getting a C8. Yep, a lot of guys are getting real excited about that car. Slick S550 saying I'm expecting the Z06 to be over 6 figures, way out of my budget. Maybe, maybe not. We're going to have to wait and see, and I'll be real excited to see what transmission they're going to include if they come out with a Z06 edition of that car. L1 saying we'll wait for a mid-engine Viper. Kind of a good idea. We'll see on that. 6.4 EV power saying an estimated weight of 3,500 with a claim 0 to 60 under 3 seconds. A tuned 6.2 should run high 10s NA. That's awesome, and that's true. It probably will run deep into the 11s, if not high 10s, and certainly high 10s on a tire. But the question is, durability, from a durability standpoint, how long will it run those 10s until you start to cook clutches? Dr. Dip is saying heat some AC in that garage. Yep, saw that. Dr. Dip saying agreed, not a fan of the dual clutch. Wish it had a 10-speed or a TR6070. Absolutely. Chaos of the Unicorns is in saying, shiznizzle, we got to be Mason on the new Ferrari Corvette and not being negative, just a joke. Listen, a lot of folks are comparing it to that. A lot of people are, instead of calling it the Corvette, I'm calling it the Calzone. Look, the new Chevy Calzone's pretty sweet. However, it's going to have its detractors, and I'm going to get to that point here in just a second. In fact, I'm going to take a few more questions and comments, and then I'll get to my thoughts on that. Dr. Div saying, I'd like to see how hard it is to do a cam or a head swap. Also want to see what Texas Speed does to embrace the rear engine modifications. It's going to be super easy. Drop the rear cradle, treat it just like you would a Trackhawk, and you'll be in good shape. Symphonics, no one but Mustang will get the GT500. The masses will choose the exotic looking, faster on a track and much cheaper C8. And the Ford GT being $450K to C8 60K. Good luck Ford selling the GT. I'm already so over that GT I can't see straight. Jay Poma in the house saying, what's up, fools? Got the peace out. Ain't had power since last night at 8 p.m. Damn, man. Y'all getting hit, right? With the storm? Dang, man. I'm sorry to hear that, brother. William saying Ford will probably now have to revive the Ford GT to be a direct competitor to the Vette. Don't hold your breath on that one. Jay Pum is saying, now I've been comparing best Ferraris for years, baby. Absolutely. The 550, man. You had the Z06 and the 550 going head to head back in the day. So that'd be the C8 or the C6 versus that 550. And then Chris is saying, I wonder if an all-wheel drive Vette will ever see the light of day. You might see a hybrid version of it. That's seemingly the way people are going, but that does add a lot of coin to that cost. Who knows? Maybe that'll be the Z06 variant. Instead of putting a supercharger on another engine, maybe they just go hybrid and call it a day. So, guys, the elephant in the room, man, we got to talk about the way that car looks. Now, you cannot get all of that performance. You cannot get the mid-engine exoticry out of that Calzone unless you start cutting corners somewhere. And, guys, I got to tell you, I'm in love with the front half of the car. Can't stand the back half of that car. Front of the car, actually it does look a little bit contrived. It's a little bit too Corvette-y. I was kind of hoping that the car was going to leave a little bit more to the imagination of the engineers. I get that you're going to want to try to bring a little bit of that Corvette flavor into the mix. However, I don't like the idea of it looking so much like a C7 just from the front fascia point of view. And again, this is coming from the point of view of, you know, just anybody immediately looking at the car, recognizing it as a Corvette from the front. However, I would have liked to see the car have a little bit of a departure from that, but can't fault them on that. The car looks fantastic, so, you know, it is what it is in that respect. The rear of that car, though, looks like it was rushed. I'm telling you right now that the car looks a little bit disproportionate. I would have really liked to have seen something a little bit different with the rear end treatment of that car. It, to me, looks a lot like, I don't know if it's Camaro, just got like ran into the back of that thing and they just said, okay, that looks fine. I don't know what it is about the back of that car, but again, this is pictures and not seeing the car in real life. You know, there's always that, there's a difference between seeing one in real life and seeing one in pictures. And in this case, I guess I'm hoping that the pictures just aren't doing that car justice. But to me, it seems a little bit contrived. I would have liked to see the car a little bit more, to have separated itself a little bit more from Corvette. In the same way that the C4 completely separated itself from the C3, in a way that the C5 completely separated itself from the C4. Yeah, there was a little bit of carryover, but in this case, I think it's a little bit much considering the fact that you completely changed that platform. I'd like to see a little bit different there. But again, it's the first year run of this thing, and can you really blame them? I mean, look, they've got a winner with the C7 already, and they've got incredibly large shoes to fill in terms of besting that platform in terms of drivability and handling and everything that is good and can be good about that platform. They've really got to go a long way to beat that platform, and I think that they've done it with this new mid-engine Vette. And to me, again, I got to say it's going to leave a really bad taste in the mouth of anybody that's considering a GT500 or that is going to hold out and wait for anything new from Dodge. It's just not going to be there in terms of performance, especially performance per dollar. But I cannot wait to see this car put up against the likes of everything European. One thing you'll notice straight away, though, is it's going to come into the fight with a power deficit. There's only so much you can get away with a $60,000 entry fee when you're going up against cars that easily cost 3, 4, 5 times as much. Corners are going to be cut, and that is kind of the issue that I've got. They have, in this situation, they have done a great thing as far as bringing this affordable, attainable, exotic to the masses, and with the fact that it's going to have a right-hand drive variant, this thing's going to be able to be shipped overseas basically as a world platform, so everybody can get a taste of this thing. I think that's fantastic, and it shows the strength and the value of the brand of Corvette. My only takeaway from this, though, is that $60,000 is going to buy you a really good powertrain, or at least a well-sorted powertrain with questionable longevity, but with everything else about the car being cheap. Interior bits, cheap. Body work and fit and finish, I am afraid, are going to be cheap. And I'm afraid that that is going to resound heavily with journos, especially overseas. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and here's to me being flat wrong on that hypothesis, on that assumption. But I can only base this opinion on what I've seen Chevrolet produce over the years. And it has always been this chase and race to the cheap when it came to interior bits, fit and finish, total quality and initial quality, both short-term and long-term, has always suffered greatly with the Corvette. So yeah, it is going to be cheap. It is a bargain in terms of performance per dollar, but I'm afraid that when this thing gets into the hands of journalists and it starts being compared with its contemporaries, taking price point away, which they will absolutely do, because you're going to start seeing it put up against who knows what on any given track, probably Nuremberg or Willow or wherever, and you're going to start to hear them probably complaining about that firsthand. The only thing I can say to that is, look, for that amount of money, you can outfit you and your whole entourage with brand new C8 Corvettes for the cost of one of insert whichever one of those European mid-engine sports cars you want to pick. Dr. Div saying, wanted a Ferrari for years. This may be the answer. It probably is. Chaos and Unicorn, Chevy Calzone. I'm so stealing it and taking it to the bank. Brother, you run like the wind with it. Jay Pum is saying that rear end is busy. Yes, it is. Shawnee's saying front looks like a Ferrari, back looks like a Corvette. It does. The only thing that I don't like about the back looking like a Corvette is that the front does look like a Ferrari. Curve that thing in a little bit. Give it a little bit of sex on the ass end of that car. Don't try to force feed Corvette down my throat when I'm looking at the Calzone. I want that thing to be as European and as sexy as it can possibly be. And if it's going to be mid-engine, that's great, but make it less, I don't know, it just seems cheap. It's like a cheap plastic toy. It's like that part of the development process was a bit overlooked because I need the C8 to carry its own identity. I don't want to drag in identity from the C7. C7 didn't bring in any identity from the C6, C6 nor for the 5, nor 5 for the 4. I want this car to have its own unique and special flavor about it. I don't need to be reminded of the C7. I want this car to make me forget about the C7. Don't remind me every time I walk into my garage and see the ass end of what could have been a C7, but is really a C8 in my garage. That's where I'm coming from with this, and that's why I'm so critical about it. Maybe with a little bit of a tweak, say they're gonna have a Grand Sport version or a Z06 version of it, a little bit wider hips, maybe a little bit different rear end treatment. Now we're talking. That's what I'm looking for with this car. I know that this is the base model that we're looking at, and I'm very excited to see it. However, I am waiting for a little bit better effort on the part of Corvette before I can really sink my teeth into it and say, man, that's the car for me. Not saying I'd ever get rid of my Hellcat for one. Love this car way the hell too much, but I can definitely see the appeal of the new Corvette for sure. Symphonics is checking in, saying I think I'm in the minority, but I like the back of the C8, but I'm also the guy that didn't hate the 19 refresh Camaro. No, I mean, you're not really in the minority. I mean, this is just a different way of looking at it from a little bit more of a critical point of view. I think on the onset, it's a good looking car, but taken into its own context and looking at the car's history, I think there's some areas where they should have done some things a little bit differently. Symphonics also saying, also to me, the interior looked fantastic. That squared off steering wheel looks awesome. I'll get to that in a minute. I think that's super cool. And I think that is something that they did do right as far as giving the new Vette its own flavor, its own identity. The whole cockpit inspired interior with the buttons and whatever going down that grab bar thing, whatever it is that's hovering out in the middle of it. I dig that a lot. The one thing I don't like about the car though is that there's no floor shifter, or I'm sorry, console shifter. I can get past that. I guess that's not really a major deal for me with this car. For some reason, it just doesn't, because it's a mid-engine car and because it's kind of got that Euro thing, for some reason, I'm not as bothered by that as I am with the GT500. I'm cool with the car being a flappy paddle type gearbox. Most guys are just going to throw it and drive and wail on it anyway. So, a gear shift in the middle just kind of gets in the way and clutters up the look of that console. So I'm cool with it being whatever it is. It is, again, more fitting for the Vette than it is for the GT500, in my opinion. Let's see. Shiny's asking, are they going to have a blower C8? Great question. It's going to depend on the durability of that transmission. I don't know if it'll handle the torque hit. GT500 seems to think they can get away with that type of a transmission with the weight of that thing and a supercharger. Obviously, you've got a lot more power in the exotics from overseas that are dealing with the same type of transmission, so clearly it can be done. I just don't know where Chevrolet is, but I'm almost positive you're going to be seeing a Z06 variant of that car, and obviously it'll probably be supercharged more than likely. Hassan's checking in saying, I might still purchase a Huracan though, but might get a C8 as well, since I was in the market already for a rear engine exotic like a Huracan. Tough to compare the two. I would challenge you to, once the Vette is released, to drive both. I think you're going to come away with an experience with the Vette that is very favorable, but not comparable to the Huracan, especially when it comes to the power department. I think the Vette's really going to leave you wanting. Williams checking in saying, where is the Vette going to fit into the exotics world now, being the new kid on the block? It's going to be a base model entry level. This is, pay less shoe stores in the Galleria, so to speak. I mean, you're bringing something super basic to the party in terms of actual performance numbers in its initial release. Now, that's not to say that the Z06 variant, if it comes, whether it's supercharged or it's a 4-cam variant of this LT2, won't be able to hold its own, but it's going to have to at least carry 650, 620 25-ish horsepower to really be in the conversation. Until it gets to that level, it's basically an American, Audi, the Audi thing, the R8, R10, not R8, you know what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm kind of running fast here, but it's going to be in that same realm, that initial, that entry-level supercar that, pretty much everybody can afford. A lot of the European car owners are probably going to thumb their nose at it. They're going to say, it's cheap, it's American, it's not going to handle as well, it's not going to accelerate as well, it won't be as fast top end, all of that. All of that may be true, but you can only holler sour grapes for so long, because the guy in the Vette is having the exact same experience as the guy in whichever high-end sports car you want to talk about, and he's doing it for far less. So again, you're going to see variants of this car come down the line that are more geared for performance, but only time will tell if those cars will be able to actually be in the same conversation as their higher priced, higher end European counterparts. Sorry, man. It's late. Symphonics, but the coolest feature to me was the lift assist. They can use GPS. That's a very cool thing. I don't know of anybody else that's got that. Alan saying never buy a first model year of any GM product. I will agree with that. Hassan saying Vette will fit perfectly in, and it will be an amazing rear engine or rear mid-engine exotic daily driver based on my experience on my modded 600 horsepower C7 Z51. He's saying I literally beat on it every day and have no issues. Man, I don't disagree with that one bit. However, we are talking about a new DSG style transmission in the Vette. Now, granted, it's a lower horsepower variant, and I think it'll do well. And I think you bring up a pretty solid point. If I was a Huracan owner, or if I was an R8 owner, or start picking anything mid-engine exotic, I would love to have that thing in the garage for the weekends and have the Vette to get me to and from work every day. I think it would make a good complement to that. So Hassan's got some high hopes for that Vette. Dr. Div saying the real question is how many of them will really be 60 grand or under. Bet one with any options will be over 70, maybe, but we'll see about that. I'm not exactly sure. You've got probably maybe 10 or 15 grand in actual options with that Z51. I'll be surprised though, just what that option list comes with. Hassan saying basically you're looking at about 72 grand fully spec'd. I'd agree with that. I think we're just chatting about that, so perfect timing. Shawnee saying I'd like to know what the actual base model will run 0 to 60 and the quarter mile. It's going to be deep in the 11s for sure. You just don't know really where. I would love to see what a Z51 will run with a set of ET Street R's on the back of it. That would be sick. I'm also a little bit concerned as far as how long those clutches will last if you're doing that regularly. Let's see. Dr. Div saying he liked the Camaro also. Yeah, we'll see how long that thing actually lasts. Jay Pumas checking in saying I was driving next to a C8 all wrapped up in that camo newspaper clipping stuff last week. I love it. I didn't know the release was the next day. Yep. Definitely something to be proud of, no doubt about it, as far as just the execution of the car. Absolutely spot on. It's exactly what we all expected. That those of us that have been trying to keep track of the C8. With the only exception that, will this car do well across all buyer types? So let's talk about that for a minute. I'm going to get off the comments here. I just saw that TU checked in, so awesome to have TU in the house. Everybody say what up, TU. Hassan said it's been clocked by driver at 2.8 seconds for the Z51. I like that. If it's checking in at 2.8, then chances are that's going to be a high 10-second pass and very low 11s. Stacey Lee's checking in and say, what up? Question, why do the 5.7 and 6.4 Hemis run higher temp thermostat at 203 than what I've heard folks say should run a lower temp for a Hemi? That is for emissions to help the car get to and maintain a higher temperature. That higher temperature will help the car as a stoichiometric burn rate, keeps that nice and high. At least that's the theory anyway. Dr. Div saying, missed my comment. What did I miss? Saying, I think the whole thing is sexy. Don't really know what they were thinking with the climate controls, though. Interior isn't my favorite, and center is ugly with that climate handle. I don't know, man. I kind of dig goofy stuff like that. And I think that those types of things will help to set the car apart long term. You know, you might be able to use that for other things as well, for, you know, newer models, or, you know, I don't know what all is on there. It looked like a whole bunch of buttons. I mean, you probably have to sit there and study up on it for a while, considering just how complicated that thing looks. But I'm sure once you're around it, it turns into second nature. Jay Palm is saying 490 horse seems kind of low. Yes, it does. We're about to get into that. And then Shawnee's saying the C8 is basically running 392 power now. That is my point. So let's talk about that engine for a second. I am a little bit concerned about that 6.2 only making 495 horsepower. That is basically on par with every garden variety 6.4 liter SRT engine that's in every Scat Pack, every SRT Durango, every SRT Jeep, every SRT and Scat Pack Charger. I'm really kind of taken aback by the fact that the car only makes that kind of power. And to me, that's a bit of a letdown. I know for a fact that there is significantly more power in that engine configuration. And well, let's look at it from another side of the coin here. Let's look at it as kind of not as a glass half empty for the Vette, but a glass half full for that 6.4 liter Hemi. I mean, we've been playing around with 490 horsepower, basically 485, 490 horsepower with the 6.4 now for years and years and years. And it's just odd to me that now their 6.2 is finally catching up with the 6.4 Hemi. Interesting to say the least. Obviously, that 6.2 is sacrificing more torque down low and wrapping that thing out up top, at least from what I've seen as far as what seems to be the shape of that intake manifold. And I think a lot of that has to do, number one, development cost. It doesn't take much to change up the cam profile a little bit on that type of, on that LT platform. Change the low profile, change the cam profile just slightly, put an intake manifold on it that is, well, more like the aftermarket intakes for all the other LS and LT variants. An intake manifold that favors higher RPM, put that type of manifold and cam combination together, because the car, number one, is lighter, and number two, has a transmission that might not be able to deal with very high torque loads. How do you get away from, how do you gain performance if you're up against that type of a challenge? Well, kill torque down low, gear it to the sky, and then throw a boatload of RPM at it. That's how you overcome that. You turn a higher RPM more efficiently, you get a higher horsepower number, and you save the transmission in the process. If it's a light enough weight car, it's not going to overstress the clutches in that transmission as much anyway as maybe the GT500 would. Sorry to keep bringing it up, but we have to as a mode of comparison here, as a contemporary. So yeah, that's kind of the direction that you go. But you got to remember, guys, yeah, the power is a little bit low, but you're spending less than $60,000 on this thing. And granted, $50,000 is a lot of money, but when you got Mustangs stickering for 40, 47, even as high as 52 for a loaded out, performance pack GT, yeah, that's a lot of dough. And then you start looking at the GT350, which, by the way, this Vette will trounce in every measurable metric that's out there. Road course, drag strip, roll racing, whatever. This thing will basically house that thing based on at least less aerodynamic drag and a better geared transmission. It might be down on power just a little bit, but trust me, it's going to hold its own just fine in every aspect that there is, and that car is more expensive than the Corvette. Let that sink in for just a minute. Let's get back to the comments. Shawnee's saying the C8 basically running 392 power. Absolutely. Kind of touching on that. We're probably going to circle back around on that. Stacey Lee's saying, like the C8, and definitely has some NSX looks. I will agree with that. William's saying the horsepower will definitely have to be increased once the Europeans start to give their opinions. That's true, but I have a feeling you're going to be seeing a lot of these cars overseas. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that the European market is going to be a lot more significant than people are going to give it credit for, especially when you consider the fact that this thing will be able to be marketed not only in Europe, but in Australia. This thing will be able to be marketed to markets that it was never able to be marketed towards before, being that you can have a right-hand drive variant. I think it's going to do really well, and because of the price point that you're looking at, you'll be able to get into these cars for a lot less, obviously, than their European counterparts. But I think because it's coming from GM, that's going to have its own series of problems based on the buyers of these cars. And I'm going to get to that here in just a second. I don't want to miss anybody out on this. Let's see. Shawnee, your best guess on the weight? I'm thinking about 3,300. Stacy's saying 33 is what he's heard. I've heard anywhere between 33 and 35. So, it's splitting hairs here. 3,400-ish, that's going to put it right where it needs to be. It's going to be very light by comparison, I can tell you that. Dr. Div saying, I wonder what type of heat problems we're going to run into when we start modding them, especially when being boosted. Maybe the power is low for a reason. A blower would shine in that car. Yeah, blower would be great. Turbos would be even better. That rear trunk space in the back, I don't know what kind of structural integrity that thing holds, heat resistance or whatever, but I'm thinking a Sawzall and a couple of snails hanging off of those manifolds would do real well. And it would be cake. Symphonic saying 3,300 was a dry weight. Seems about right. Would start adding fluids and other stuff. 34 doesn't seem out of the question. T saying spot on. B, you're 100% correct. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the kind words. So let me get into some more concerns that I have with the Corvette. So first and foremost, you got to remember the buyers of Corvette. Who is the demographic? And I get it. Take the Hawaiian shirt, jean shorts, and, penny loafer thing out of this. I get that 100%. But the problem with Corvette, especially with this transmission, again, I'm going to ride this transmission argument straight into the ground, beat it like a dead horse, whatever you want to talk about, or however you want to call it. I'm going to keep basically harping on this because I know who buys these cars. We're talking guys that are just getting into sports cars. That it is the safe, fast alternative. You've got the modded guys, the guys that just want to mod the hell out of these things and see just how much power they can get out of them. You've got casual sports car fans, people that just enjoy the car for what it is, love the aesthetic, and are going to drive this thing in traffic. They're going to drive it in hilly areas, cruise nights and stuff like that. A lot of stop and go traffic, which is murder on a DSG style transmission. You're going to have a lot of those buyers coming into the mix as well. And you might say, well, Brian, look, you got manual transmissions that are being put through the same thing, and those things seem to hold up just fine. Yeah, they kind of do. But where DSGs get completely and totally bewildered is in low speed, low load conditions. They have no idea what to do. They're great at wide open throttle and completely shut throttle. They will slam down shifts. They hit up shifts spot on. That's great. They do moderate load and high load acceleration extremely well. The problem is when you start trying to drive these things in stop and start style traffic, that's where they just completely lose their head. It's very difficult for those transmissions to operate under those conditions, or at least characteristically, it has been up to this point. Not saying that they can't fix it, not saying you can't program around it. It's just my experience with a lot of these cars is that they get jerky, and a lot of folks are not going to be cool with that, especially Corvette buyers. The way that I almost look at this is they're the civilians of the sports car world. You don't see them at drag strips. You don't see them racing the cars, so to speak. They're not on closed circuits. They're not autocrossing these things. They're not doing anything. They're treating the car like a transportation appliance, and that's really not what you want to do with a car like the Corvette. However, the problem with that is that Corvette has a track record of being Jeep Wagoneer style durability, Corolla drivability, and being the car that you can drive to the grocery store, drive across country, take to the drag strip, take to the whatever, closed track you want to, and have that durability about them, and be able to drive them to and from work in crazy traffic. And if you've got an automatic, it's no different than driving a pickup truck or any other transportation appliance to and from work. That's been the shine of the Corvette. You could get it with an automatic, you could get it with a true manual transmission, and if you wanted the Barbie type of vet to just be able to take out, cruise, go to work in, and do whatever, you could get that. I know it because I had it. I had a freaking drop dead gorgeous 96 that I really wish I'd have never sold. It was by all rights slow, but it was very, very torquey, and it was fun to drive. Put the thing in drive with the top off of that thing, take it back and forth up and down the freeway, whatever. It was a beautiful car and such a fun experience because you didn't worry about going fast. It was super torquey off the line, and it would cruise at 100 miles an hour like it was nothing. It would do anything and everything all the time, and that's what made the Vet so great. That's one of the two Vets that I own. My other one was my 04 Z06. Basically heads, cam, intake, throttle body, Veraram, detent mod, MGW shifter, basically high 10, low 11 second Vet. Lots of fun, but if I were to take my pick between the two to drive, I would drive my C4 because it would do everything. And I'm afraid that the Corvette, now that they're going to this type of a platform, is moving a little bit too far away from what made the Corvette such a darling. That anybody could drive. You didn't have to explain what the transmission is doing. And if the transmission is not perfectly sorted and you get that kind of jerky, the engage and disengage of the clutch, that's going to be where folks are really going to get turned off on this car. I'm sure that there's been enough development to engineer all of that out. I bet this thing is as smooth as silk, but will it stay smooth as silk, and will it stay durable in the hands of, whoever, just like your Aunt Mimi driving the thing around? Is she going to get the same type of durability out of it that she would have gotten out of her C6 with an automatic? I don't know, but if history is any indicator of this, future performance, past history, future performance argument, the answer is kind of no. So I need some of y'all's comments here. Dr. Div saying, I like your thinking, this is why. Let's see, Stacey Lee saying maybe brake horsepower down to keep Euro taxes manageable. Good point. A guy I know from Finland says taxes apply by brake horsepower. Could very well be. TU's hollering out at Jay Pummel. What up, y'all? Alex Garcia saying, does anybody know who makes the trans? That's a great question. I have no idea. It'd be interesting to see if it's a derivative of the Tremec that's in the GT500, but I'm not sure. Let's see. John, here he goes. John said, Alex, it is Tremec. Okay. That's good that it's the Tremec. But again, is that thing durable? That's the question. Let's see. Sean E is asking, are you feeling a little better about the C8 than the new GT500? Yeah, I'm feeling a hell of a lot better about the new C8 than I am about the GT500. There's a lot of tradition that is getting bucked with the GT500. And there's a lot of new tradition being created by the Corvette. You got to understand that the Corvette comes from a different place. The Corvette has been a brand in and of itself as a sports car for a very long time. And because of that, it can get it, to me, just by perception, my perception of the thing is that it can get away with a little bit more than what the GT500 can get away with. The GT500, when it was originally released, I'm not talking about from the 60s, I'm talking about in 07, when that car was released, it had no competition to speak of at all. Supercharged 4-valve V8, 6-speed manual, just agrarian with its simplicity in terms of transmission and engine layout, the whole bit. That type of a just brute muscle car that needs to have should have had and still should have had a torque converter automatic and a true manual transmission. Then they come out with a dual clutch that I'm afraid will not be able to handle the torque and the weight of the car. It's not really the torque, but it's the torque combined with the weight of that car that I think is going to be its major downfall. So, in this case, we're talking about the Vette, much lower torque, good horsepower, but nowhere near what the Mustang is going to make. In a lighter weight car, the Vette is going to be more durable just by those rights alone. So yes, I feel way better about the Vette than I do the GT500. I am much more excited about the Vette than I am the GT500. And to be quite honest, the Calzone to me is much better at being sports car than the new GT500 is at being muscle car. Big difference, must draw that distinction. And where the Corvette wins is everywhere that the Mustang fails. And when I say fails, I mean Ford had every opportunity to get the GT500 right, and they didn't. Chevrolet had every opportunity to get the Vette right, and it looks to me like they did. Symphonic saying, I'm really hoping the C8 with its affordable price and new looks being in a younger crowd. I agree with that. I'm glad to see that. Again, new generation for a new generation of Corvette buyers, which leads me to another point. And I'm glad you brought this up. Good time to segue into this. Corvette needs and needed to have some new life breathed into it. One of the biggest issues that I had with the Corvette leading up to the C7, and really including the C7, the base Stingray, is it seemed like it was pandering to a dying demographic. That's great. You can keep pandering to people's fathers and grandfathers all you want, because characteristically they've got the scratch to actually throw down on one of these cars. But you've got a group of guys that are in their late 20s, early 30s, maybe even into their early and mid 40s that are now making plenty of money. They've either don't have kids, or the kids are gone, or the kids are old enough they can fend for themselves. Time for mom and dad to get a Vette. Fantastic. Those are the ones that need something new and fresh. That's great. But Corvette needs to quit, and I'm glad that they've done this. They needed to quit relying on their past, I guess, modus operandi. Front engine, rear drive, sports car platform. That needed to go away. That is an old way of thinking, and nobody on the European side is doing that for good reason. And now that Corvette has this new, fresh identity, even though it was Zora Argus Duntoff's vision for the car basically back when the car was, just in its, second generation, even then, the father of this thing was saying it really needs to be mid-engine. So now we're finally catching up with that mentality. I think that's perfect and beautiful, and that is translating into appealing to a younger demographic, making the Corvette not be your dad's car, not be your granddad's car, but be the younger generation's car. That to me is the most important part of it, because to be honest, there are plenty of other options now that are available. And if the Corvette remains just another front engine, rear drive sports car, it's going to get lost in the shuffle, and it's never going to live up to its European counterparts until now. And so I'm very excited for that. And again, the younger generation has now got an American sports car that is attainable to them, that they can gravitate towards, that has that same appeal as that poster car that you would see from an Italian manufacturer or from any other mid-engine hyper car. Shawnee's asking, DSG low-speed drivability is not good. DCT, whatever alphabet soup you want to call it, no. As a matter of fact, they're kind of known for being a bit jerky, especially down low. They also get very confused with varying throttle inputs. You got to remember that you've got solenoids that are activating clutch engage and disengage. You've got in the transmission where, like, say for example, an HP70 has a predictive shift algorithm, especially under wide open throttle, where it predicts the next gear shift, where it's going to fall in line in terms of RPM. These types of DSG dual clutch, basically automatic manual transmissions, it is engaging and preparing gears for what it predicts as an upshift. They do very good at that, but when you start getting into varying throttle input, basically positions, varying throttle positions that aren't wide open throttle, that maintain a wide open throttle position, or a partial throttle position for that matter, that predictive gear selection is what ends up getting screwed up. And so you'll find that it'll just land in the wrong gear on occasion. You know, a couple of the BMWs that I've driven were bad about that. So anyway, those are older though, and I'm not even going to hold the Vette to that poor level of poor performance. But they do have a nasty habit of not only being jerky under partial throttle or light throttle transition positions, which that's your wheelhouse during stop and go traffic. The other issue that you're going to run into with them again is the clutches. When you're dealing with a DSG style transmission, it's how is that thing going to bring in the clutch? What is the rate of engagement and disengagement when you're in those positions? If you get in a position where you want to try to roll into the throttle, then you're out of it, roll into the throttle, then you're out of it, you can get those clutches come in a little bit too quickly and it'll make the car jerk a little bit, then you get out of it. It can just seem a little bit, it'll seem a little bit out of sorts, or at least some of them have in the past. Alex Garcia is saying, looking at the Murcielagos, they go through clutch by 20 minutes of stop and go traffic. That's a $25,000 clutch swap. That's what a lot of people are worried about on that, by the way. Hang on, let me bust out the Topo Chico. Hey, here's a trick for you guys. If you're married, you don't have a bottle opener, you got your wedding ring, and you always got a bottle opener on hand. Literally. Love these things. I always joke that my wife got me a beer opener, but it's my wedding ring. Anyway, we're Topo Chicoing it tonight. John saying, at Shawnee, it's gotten better, but there's a reason why BMW and Audi, etc., all went back to a ZF torque converter after spending so much R&D on SMG/DSG transmissions the last few decades. That's the whole point that I'm getting at when I was talking about the ZF being in practically every hot rod from overseas. There's a reason for it. Aston Martin, Bentley, BMW, all of them use ZF variants, whether it's the HP70 or HP90. The same transmission that's backing up this Hellcat's backing up Rolls Royces with a ton of torque and a ton of power in very heavy applications. So yeah, there's a reason why they use those transmissions now over the DSG. And I got to tell you, man, John makes a great point with that. Shawnee's saying, I'm curious how the Corvette and the GT500 will appeal to normal people with the drivability and the dual clutch transmission. I don't know. We'll only see here. Time will tell, but it may not go as well as they think. Jay Poma is saying, were Corvettes not available globally until now? They were, but they were only available in left-hand drive. And now they're going to have a right-hand drive variant that's going to fit in very well with a broad spectrum of other markets. Again, the Aussies, England, and wherever else they drive on the wrong side of the road. Dr. saying, missed my question on heat problems up there. Yeah, I probably did, trying to go through these pretty quickly, but yeah, the heat issue is going to go pretty quickly. If you're asking about the thermostat, I think I answered that one, brother. Alex is saying, what are your thoughts about the 2023 Dodge Cuda? Well, there's been quite a bit of speculation on the Cuda, and first of all, what platform is it going to be? It's going to be on a modified version of the LX platform, is my understanding, as far as power plants. That may be the introduction of an aluminum block 392, but I doubt it. Probably going to stick and hold with what they've got. They're doing very well with it. The modified LX platform is supposed to drop weight. By how much, I'm not sure, but I've heard reports as much as 300 pounds. But, that's not a ton, but it's still significant. You pair that 392 with any of the ZF variants, and it's going to do very well in terms of performance. I've also heard that the Cuda is going to be the new Halo car. I've heard, obviously, Hellcat, Red Eye variants being thrown around. I've also heard of development on a Viper V8, the V8 powered variety of the Viper, or at least that was what was getting kicked around at one point but that was several years ago, and I think that was just more or less in not green lit, basically just a whiteboard type of a discussion on that thing. But my understanding is the new CUDA will be the new Halo car, and we'll just have to see where that thing falls in line once we start getting more specifications on it, because even the folks that I know that, you know, it's kind of their business to know these type of things are getting some interesting info. Nobody knows except for the people that are developing it, and obviously they're going to keep it very tight-lipped. But if it's everything that we've been led to believe leading up to this, it'll definitely be worth the wait, and will be a very strong competitor to the Corvette, if for no other reason than, you know, if it's got a ZF8 speed, it's going to be a contender from a drivability standpoint straight away. White Knuckles saying, hey Brian, a little off topic, but any plans on starting to do an engine tune on Revlon, seeing how the transmission tune looks like it's doing its thing? Not really. For a couple of reasons. One, fuel quality issues. I'm not so much worried about fuel quality with her. It's just an idea that right now I wanted to see how deep I could get her without having to mess with trying to get more power out of the car. I don't think I can get a significant amount of power out of the car from just a tune on 93 octane or even a mild mix of race gas. So let's say I pull 20 odd horsepower, 30 odd horsepower out of the car. It's not really going to make much of a difference at this current power level. I would need to see about a 10 to 12% power gain to really get me into the realm of, you know, being able to see a true gain in power. It's a whole lot easier for me to just wait till it gets a little bit cooler, see how deep into that 10-20 range I can get. Obviously, the goal is to get the car to go at least as quick as a 10-29. Shooting for a 10-32, but if it could go 29, I'd be really happy. 10 teens aren't out of the question, but it'd be tough. I would rather go with a 309 gear and perfect the trans tune with a 309 gear. I think I'll pick up significantly more there, and it'll be a safer combination overall in terms of dealing with fuel quality. Let's see. Shai is asking, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Should Dodge make an all-wheel drive Hemi Challenger or bring back the Hemi all-wheel drive Charger? I don't think so. I really don't. I think the weight is an issue. If you want an all-wheel drive variant, go grab you one of the Hemi Cherokees or a Trackhawk. That will get you where you need to be. You know, Durango does it just as well. Go with something that is a bit more of a robust platform for that. I think we need to keep the weight down. I think the extra weight is going to do it a disservice and not do it any favors. Not to mention packaging can be a bit tricky, because you're going to have to go with a significantly more robust transfer case, and I just don't see that being able to fit, at least not properly, in this platform. John's asking or saying GM ain't totally stupid, and they damn sure see what's going on with Harley and the whole what me drive millennial market. Yeah, trust me, that's a pretty significant issue right there. Keeping in mind that, you know, there's a certain part of the buying public that's going to treat these things like a car, and unfortunately you cannot treat them just like any other transportation appliance. That can be a very bad thing. So just keep that in the back of your mind when we're talking about these things, these issues that we could have with the Vet. It always comes back to durability here with me, and I'm sorry if I'm, you know, belaying the point here, but to me, it's got to be durable. It's got to have that pickup truck durability that we've all grown accustomed to with Corvettes. Yeah, the C4 had electrical problems, and yeah, the C5 was very cheaply built. C6 was a decent improvement, but not a complete improvement over the C5. Now we're into the C7. Apparently all is well, but you make a big change like this, especially with something as wholesale important as a transmission, that's where I see potential problems coming into play. Let's see. William saying traditionalist Vet owners are starting to complain because it looks too European, not American enough. Well, I got news for you, for any traditionalists that are out there in the Corvette world. If front engine, rear drive, sports car, if it's a problem for you, that the Vette has gone away from that. First of all, traditionalist, keep in mind there have been quite a few concept versions of the Vette that were mid-engine, none the least of which were penned by Zora artist Duntov himself, the guy that is your GM Carroll Shelby. Test bed and test platform varieties of that car have been out there for some time. But if history means nothing to you and you're only going off of what you've seen in the showrooms, it's high time that you either get with the times or get you a C7 Z06, drive that thing until you just can't drive anymore, and just rock out with the memories that you've got with it, and let the new generation have their time. Because there was a point in time where those older traditionalists were scoffing at the C4, saying it looks way too modern. They wanted to keep that C3, and look what the C4 evolved into over time. That's what the C8 is doing, and the tradition of Corvette is to buck the trend with every generation that comes after itself. And to be honest, the C7 Stingray, not talking about the Z06, not talking about the Grand Sport, just with the way that they look, but the C7, that initial C7 to me, was not enough a departure. Granted, the interior ergonomics are significantly better than the C6, but it's not enough of a break, and Corvette needed this to capture that youth market that quite honestly has been moving away from Corvette for quite a while. Let's see, Lightning Blue is checking in saying, what up, E. Mason? Never been a Vette guy, but I think the C8 is awesome. Curious how much it costs with the Z51. Speculation, I believe on that's about 72. But we'll see, $72,000 on that. Dim Boys running saying now would be a good time for Dodge to bring the Viper back. Yeah, maybe. Only a Viper can actively compete with the Corvette in terms of market acceptability. You got to remember that the Viper went away because nobody was buying it. It didn't compete at all with the Corvette from a drivability standpoint. There was no automatic transmission, which was the Achilles heel of the Viper. But now, with the door kind of being cracked open a little bit for Viper to come back, what I would like to see is a Viper-specific platform, aluminum Hemi-based power, whether it's naturally aspirated or supercharged, as in the Hellcat or Red Eye. Put the ZF behind it and put the TR60, 60, or 70 behind it and call it good. That's all you need. Simple, very robust, very strong performing platform. Have it be the front engine rear drive hot rod that anybody can drive, and see if that can absorb some of that market share. But it's going to take the ZF in that car to make it happen. Not sure if Dodge, or FCA rather, would have the resources or would want to spend the resources on putting together that type of a car. It's nice to dream about, but let's be honest, they're selling so many Scat Packs, Durango SRTs, Trackhawks, Hellcats of both the Charger and the Challenger variety. They're selling so many of those that maybe the Viper really doesn't need to be made. I mean, it's a cool thing to have around, but believe me when I tell you that the Viper is there not only to sell units, but to generate excitement, the same way the Corvette exists to bring in other buyers that maybe not buy a Vette, but might buy that Chevy Cruze as their daily commuter. But it generates excitement. Well, Mopar, FCA, however you want to call it, they've got plenty of excitement with their Hellcat and Red Eye variety. So add to that the secondary appeal of the Trackhawk and the SRT Durango. Do they need a Viper? Is it even necessary? Is there enough money to be generated in terms of profit margin in the Viper to make it a viable brand on its own? That's the big trick. You see, the Vette is its own brand. It is its own entity. Corvette can quite literally stand on its own in some ways of looking at it, with the price point being the only thing that the weight of GM helps to create for that car. But the reality is that that brand can stand by itself. I don't think that Viper could. Let's see. Dr. Div saying, my mom's Fiat 500L 4-door, it has a DCT and it is very weird to drive. And you feel like you have to be light on it or it will give you mixed upshifts. That's, again, exactly what we were talking about before. Those weird upshifts, especially under light and partial throttle conditions. Biggest reason for right-hand drive in Vet, China. Yep, I would agree with that. Alex Garcia saying, yep, they like American things. Yeah, they do. Alex Garcia saying, and there is a lot of them, at least that's what I've heard. It's a huge emerging market, that's for sure. Let's see. John saying, FCA just announced the Voyager nameplate is coming back next year as a Chrysler, not a Plymouth. So that argument that there can't be a Dodge Cuda kind of falls flat now. Oh yeah, no, there could be Dodge anything. Hey, Multiple Mopars is in saying, I'm in from a hotel in Tennessee, headed to Ohio for Legion of Demons. Get out there and tear them up, brother. Go get them. Symphonics is saying, Z51 package has always $5,000 with the C7s. That included a drive sump, and now the C8 base comes with the drive sump, so probably less than $5,000. Maybe, unless they're offering other options in there as well, different gearing, significantly upgraded suspension, maybe a different wheel and tire package. Those things may be coming into play as well. So aero kits and things of that nature. TU saying, Brian, can you believe that Demonology has a nerve to go live right now? I need to go tell him it's B Mason live time. No, man, he's doing his thing. He's probably at the drag strip racing. So cheers to him. Hope he gets out there and snatches some souls for us, Mopar guys. That's awesome, though. Thanks to you. Molten Mopar saying, and FYI, I'm not a huge fan of what I see on the new Vet, but I have to say pricing is on point for sure. You know, I'm interested in Molten Mopars if they come out with a Z06 version. What are your thoughts on that DCT transmission in terms of long-term durability? That's my big issue. And so far as what I've seen, and Dr. Dipp was even mentioning even about the Fiat 500, it having a bit of a jerky shifting, kind of gets a little bit confused, just like all of them seem to. Could you imagine being in the service department of a Chevrolet dealership and having to field the phone calls and deal with in person folks coming in and having that argument or that complaint about a drivability issue with that car? It seems to me that would be something that would be you're just opening yourself up for a lot of issues. And I cannot believe that they didn't put a more, dare I say, millennial friendly, should I say woman friendly? Is that even right to say? Somebody that's used to driving just a more pedestrian type of a car, you put them into the Vet, it gets a little jerky. They say, can you still make the argument? Well, it's a performance car. It's going to have different driving characteristics. Can you still have that conversation? Is that even still okay to have? Or will people even accept that as an excuse for the way that the car drives if it is jerky? Or is this going to turn into some type of a buyback situation where it's, man, we shouldn't have done that transmission. We're getting too many complaints on it. Again, it does beg the question a little bit. And you've got to look at the buying public, the buying demographic for this type of car is everybody. It's not just your performance enthusiast. It's not just your racer. It's not just your younger guy or younger girl that's going out and really ripping this thing on a closed track. It's the guy or gal that's going to drive this thing to and from. And by the way, I say gal because Corvettes have a very strong female following. There are a lot of ladies that love driving their Corvettes that are not going to put up with a jerky driving experience the way that some guys might. I know that might sound like an overgeneralization, but it kind of rings true. So you got to bring it up, and it could be a significant point to discuss later on once these things get out into the world. Dr. Div saying, wonder what type of heat problems with C8 we're going to have run into when we start modding them, especially when we boost them. Maybe the 6.2 is a lower power for heat reasons. A blower would shine in that car. No, so what I was talking about on that point earlier was heat issues could potentially be a problem, but I think heat problems are going to be the least of your problems. I think the transmission is going to be the bigger issue. I mean, you can get around heat issues with heat exchangers and coolers and everything else. I mean, there's ways around that. You can retro engineer anything to work in that car as far as heat exchangers or heat extractors. My big concern, and again, you know, I was talking about that space right behind the engine where it's like a trunk. If it's me, I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, I don't know what I got to do to mitigate heat back here, but yeah, this is a perfect spot to stick turbos. So, you know, for me, there's that to consider as well. And, you know, the whole thing about the heat issue for me is, you know, heat to me is going to be a secondary problem. It's going to be the durability of the transmission, and programming and tuning that transmission to work with the higher power that's going to be the bigger challenge. Let's see. Symphonic saying, with all the visual criticism of the C8, I'm surprised no one cares that they ditched the quad center exhaust. Yeah, it's kind of been a long time coming, bro. You ever notice on the back of C6s and C5s, well, especially C5s, where they're all crooked because the engine torque and it jacks them up? Anyway, I always thought that was funny. Dim Boy says, do you think the Dodge should kill off the 5.7 and bring back the 6.1 and put it in the RT, or drop naturally aspirated 6.2 from the Hellcat and put that in the RT? So what, I don't think so. The 5.7 is actually a very robust engine. I don't think that the 6.1 would suffer. The 5.7 paired up with that 8-speed automatic is a very strong performing setup. I think what they should do is give the 5.7 the same manifolds that the 6.4 and the Hellcat have. Give it a proper exhaust system and let that thing breathe a little bit better with a better intake manifold. And I think that would be all you would need for that 5.7. Again, kick that thing up to, you know, 400 odd horsepower, say 415 horse or what have you. Revise the intake manifold for the 6.4 so it'll actually breathe on the big end. Give a slight camera vision and kick that thing up to about 520 horsepower net. I think that's really where it needs to be. I think the 5.7 can get kicked to 415 pretty easily from 370 just with those minor mods. But that's easy to do with the truck engines alone. Give the 6.4 a little bit better breathing up top, and I think you'll be just right. I think that'll be the sauce that you're looking for. Mopar is saying, I wish they'd have kept the C7 and C8 especially. Tailor the C8 as a track performer and the C7 for street strip use. Yeah, me too, especially considering the C7 you can get with a automatic, like a real automatic transmission that people can actually drive. At first, the first set of rumors was that they were going to roll in tandem and that the C8 was basically going to be released as a higher end Corvette. In other words, starting at about $85,000 to $90,000, 4-cam, and then with a Z06 variant. That to me would have made more sense. A 4-cam somewhere in the 550 to 600 horsepower range, very high winding, say 75, 7,800 RPM, 6.2 liter. That really would have been ideal for me. But they chose to go a different route, yoink the C7 altogether, go with the platform, go with the C8 platform, and to be honest with you, I can't say that I blame them for it. It is a new way to go. I'm just overwhelmingly concerned with, will this thing be able to handle modifications the way that the C7 and C6 and C5 and just keep going down the line? That's been the whole, just the beauty of the Corvette. It's just not only how well it would handle mods, but just how much of a presence that car can be at the drag strip. In fact, I haven't forgotten, but I do have to put the ride-along video and the outside the car video of last weekend's trip to the drag strip. One of the videos, I need to coincide the two, but I raced just a built to the hilt C6, car ran 10 O's. And I mean, that's to me what the Vette does. And in that video, part of my commentary is finally a Corvette doing what it's supposed to do. Gun me down at the top end of the track. The car went 10.0, I went 10.60, and I think I went 128. That car went close to 140 miles an hour in the quarter. It did exactly what Corvettes are supposed to do, and I was stoked to see that. I'm afraid, hoping I'm proven wrong here, but I'm afraid that those days are numbered for the Corvette. And unless you go C6 or build a ripping C7, you're just not going to be able to extract that type of power out of the Vette without damaging something just aft of that engine, or should I say just forward of that transmission. Let's see, John is checking in saying, pretty sure the Z51 is going to be the only way to get the hypo exhaust, better aero, etc. So expect more than $5,000 premium, which is what I was saying, especially considering how dealers will be ordering the no strippers. Probably right on that. Let's see. John saying at Dimboy, basically he's saying 5.7 isn't going anywhere. Molten Mopar is saying, I have some concerns on long-term durability on the DC trans. Chevy's going to have to say, hey, this is a performance car. It is what it is. Stop tailoring tuning for 80-year-olds. You know, that's part of it. You know, when we're talking about the Vette, you know, moving forward with this new platform, that is going to have to be part of the conversation. Almost to the point where somebody's going to have to sign a waiver saying this is a performance car. I understand what this thing does is in terms of drivability is going to be different. It's going to perform differently than a minivan or a pickup truck. This is what is going to be different. I acknowledge that. John Hancock, and you're done. That is going to have to take place because unless it's very well established up front, you got a lot of complaints, and we'll probably still have complaints on the tail end of this thing. Dimboy is saying, John, you got a point, but I just wish Dodge would have done more if they'd have been focused on the SRT brand lately. You know, I tell you something. I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm just saying that they won't. That's kind of the issue here. I just don't see them ever putting anything more into the SRT platform, whether it's your 6.4, you know, we've already got the Red Eye, which is a phenomenal package as it sits. The 5.7 is what it is. I mean, it's a corporate V8, and it's doing very well in the trucks and in the cars with, you know, realistically a fairly low failure rate, even though everybody seems to be complaining about lifters and stuff like that. You look at, you know, other reports that are showing strong long-term durability, at least with, you know, revised or re-engineered lifters or whatever the case is that they've had. So as far as hopping up the 5.7, again, it's going to be tough because, you know, how do you go about doing that in an economical way that's not going to add dollars to every car that you make? Well, you just put parts on the car that either cost a little bit more money, like the SRT manifolds, put a proper exhaust on it, get the thing up to, say, 415, 420 horse, and then call it good at that point and let that ride off into the sunset. John almost parody. Yeah, he's running tough call for FCA. Hop out the 5.7 and then you steal Thunder from 6.4s, and those are the margin, and actually make a profit models. You know, that's kind of true, and I've been saying that the 5.7 is underrated in those cars for a while to just kind of make the gap a little bit larger. But the reality is that the trucks and the cars typically will put down similar numbers to the rear wheels. The trucks will nudge them out sometimes a little bit, the cars, the 5.7, but a lot of that has to do with the intake manifold. The truck just has a better intake manifold than the cars do. It's just kind of the way that it is. Cars don't have variable runners, the trucks do. Again, add a slight amount of complexity, or at least bring it up to the level of the trucks, and you got yourself a winner already. Dim Boys Run is asking, what do you prefer, the Demon or the Red Eye? I prefer the Red Eye, and let me tell you why. The Red Eye comes with a better street suspension than the Demon does. If you ever get the opportunity to drive or ride in a Demon, one of the first things you'll notice is just how soft the suspension is. It's like riding in an older luxury car. Think town car, think almost Roadmaster-ish, the way that thing will just kind of float. So there's that. In fact, to that point, that car, the Demon, in track mode feels like my Hellcat in street mode. It just kind of floats. In fact, it's not unnerving or anything like that. It's actually really comfortable to drive. The Red Eye has very distinct suspension settings in that, you know, track is very firm, sport is in the middle, and street is a little bit softer, but it's never going to be as soft as the Hellcat. But aside from that, I like the Red Eye because the Red Eye is not necessarily exclusive in the way that the Demon is. I wouldn't have a problem hot rodding the Red Eye. Another reason why I really like the Red Eye over the Demon is that you can get a Red Eye in a non-wide body. And that to me is something that I really like about the Red Eye, even though right now it's a little bit outside of my price range. I've got a good thing going with Revlon, and I'm going to keep that rocking. So, but if I were in the market for a Red Eye and I wanted to go 309 and do just a regular body, I could. I also like the idea that you can option a Red Eye with a 262 gear if you wanted to. If you were really planning on throwing the screws to that thing, you can still get a 262 gear, which works very well with modified Hellcats. So you can kind of tailor make a Red Eye in a way that you can't with a Demon. So not trying to get too far off topic on the vets, but you know, that's really what how I feel about those. Well, Mopars, who has one of each, saying Demon suspension is the key to what a Demon is. Absolutely. Forget the fancy electronics. It's the suspension and drag radials. Weight transfer is key. Absolutely it is, especially at that power level. Den Boys is saying, I know Ford are going to have to step up their game if they want to compete. Chevy released the C8 and that car totally stole the show. It really did. And I'll tell you something else. There's nothing that Ford can do to compete with that car. Absolutely nothing. In fact, you talk about getting your thunder stole. This is one of those situations where, despite Ford's best efforts, which were pathetic by any true, honest assumption, or not assumption, but calculation here. They were so bad about the marketing of the GT500 and completely missed the mark in terms of price point versus the C8. The GT500 is more of the same, whereas the C8 is a complete departure from the norm, which is very exciting and very compelling for most buyers. The C8 comes in at a lower price point. It comes in at roughly the same price point with the Z51 package, but yet the performance will be orders of magnitude better than the GT500. And be on the lookout for a comparison between the two once they're both released. And don't be surprised if the lower powered C8 beats the Mustang in every single test that is run. My thought is, what will the drivability be like between the two, and which one will fail during the test? I think that is another thing to look at is, will the Mustang fail under very heavy load? I know that they had one at Goodwood, and you know, Von Gidden went out and tore it up with that thing, but that's Goodwood, and the car didn't make it through the end of the pass without a check engine light. So will the Mustang fail, and will the Corvette prevail? That's really the question in terms of just making it to the end of the test without dying, blowing up, having weird check engine lights. That's really more the test than anything else. Let's see. Taz is coming in and saying, hey, Mr. Mason, picked up a 2015 Challenger RT with the Super Track Pack option. I've owned a base model RT, and I can say the Super Track Pack is great on these 5.7s. I'll agree with that. Congrats on the new ride. John's hollering out at Den Boys. saying, and don't forget the huge amount of free content upgrades that got waterfall from the SRT models down to the RT models for 19 hood. Air catchers are all now standard. Yeah, that's true. Talking about waterfalling. Dim Boys is asking, what do you think about the Camaro being discontinued in 2023? Hey, I'm not surprised. Let me tell you something. You've got the Mustang GT that does Mustang better than anything. And what I mean by that is Mustang juxtaposed with Camaro. Camaro has traditionally tried to out Mustang at everything it does. The problem is that now Mustang has another bookend, which is the Challenger in terms of two-door hot rods. The Challenger being the muscle car, Mustang being the more sporty car. Challenger being that crazy hard 0 to 60, amazingly strong 8th mile. Mustang being very good 0 to 60, but strong quarter mile. You've got a bookended driving experience, and in fact, you could have one of each. You could have a Scat Pack Challenger or Charger, mind you, in your garage, and a Mustang in your garage, and have a completely different driving experience between the two. And you can have your chocolate and your vanilla. The problem is the Camaro is a bad compromise between the two. Visibility is god-awful by comparison to the Mustang or the Challenger. Its bottom-end torque is not as good and doesn't feel as punchy as the Mopar does. And it doesn't have the top-end rush that the Mustang does. It is a compromise where none of its attributes are greater than what it is up against with its direct line-of-sight competitor. Bigger engine, that competes with the 6.4, but the 6.4 beats it in terms of actual feel. Handles really well, but it doesn't have the same ergonomic advantage that the Mustang has, so the Mustang wins that fight. You lose literally on two fronts, you got to check out. The only way the Camaro, especially with the C8 coming on board, the only way that the Camaro could really compete with the Challenger or the Mustang is to be considerably better at both. In other words, to kind of give you a visual aid here, you've got Mustang and you've got the Challenger. The Camaro needs to be up. It needs to be better accelerating and better handling. Right now it goes down. That pyramid goes down, and that's your Camaro. That's a bad place to be. It doesn't matter what you can do to modify that car to make it faster or whatnot. The general public sees it as a poor compromise, and they're not buying it. Sales figures will prove that point for me. Trey is saying the only scary thing is it has 139,000 miles. It'll run fine. Don't worry about it. Dim Boy is saying, John, yeah, you got a point, man. The RT is thriving off the trickle down. Yeah, it is. And then Dim Boy is saying, well, given Ford's recent issues with their motors and transmissions, I'm banking my money on Ford failing and the Vette thriving. I would agree with that, my friend. TU saying, so true, man. GM revealed the C8 way better than Ford did with the GT500. Absolutely, they did. Plus, the C8 will destroy the GT500 on track/course, and more than likely be neck and neck with 500 with the 500 with over 250 horsepower. Talking about as the deficit, all for a much lower MSRP. 100% correct. And keep in mind that, again, we're talking about a Vette for the younger generation. We're talking about a Vette for the young at heart. We're not talking about a Vette for traditionalists. We're not talking about a Vette for the Hawaiian shirt and blue jean short crowd. We're talking about a Vette for folks that wanted Corvette to compete with the likes of the Europeans, but at an attainable price point that a man or woman that is working a full-time job that is somewhat established can go out and purchase. That's where the Vette is going to shine, and that is where the Corvette is going to run all over that GT500. And it'll put people in the seat of a Corvette that maybe would have bought a GT350, that maybe would have bought a GT500, that want that European and that exotic flair, but clearly don't find that experience is worth mortgaging their house over. That is what this car is going to accomplish. And whether it's in Z06 guys with 650 horsepower or 700 horsepower, just pick a number that sounds big, it doesn't matter, or it's the base model. It will all give you the same type of experience, especially that Z51 package, because 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds, very low 11-second quarter mile times. You're going to be hard pressed, really, once you start getting into those type of performance numbers. As somebody who's driven a lot of extremely fast cars, guys, I can tell you that there is a point where performance, a faster car, doesn't really matter anymore. There's a point that it just, you can't really feel the difference. You can't really tell the difference. So yeah, a 9-second car is going to feel way faster. You know, a car running 980 is going to feel way faster than a car that runs 1080. But it's not an unfamiliar feeling. It's not change your mind on what is considered fast and not fast. They're both ungodly fast. So take that understanding and transition it into the Corvette. 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. Give you an idea, this car at the drag strip, when this thing runs a mid 10-second pass, it's 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. That is exactly part of the performance dynamic that you're going to start seeing out of these cars. Show me another car that can give you that level of performance at that price point. You can't. Not even a used exotic will do those kind of figures. So there's that to consider as well. John is saying, I'm looking at the recommended videos below this chat window, and the first one is Shmi 150 drooling over the C8. That's the demographic that sells cars, or the dreams of cars to kids of today. Yeah, I don't even know who that is, but I believe what you're saying with a name like Shmi. I don't know what that is, but you know, I'm sure, and that's part of the allure of this car, is reaching out and grabbing that youth market and trying to bring something to the table that Corvette as a brand just hasn't been able to attain. And also keep something else in mind, guys. You know, Corvette it has its own stigma about it as well. That's another big issue that Corvette they have to have a mid-engine car now, just to get away from and to separate themselves and to not have that same stigma, or to at least mitigate the stigma of Corvette guy as much as possible. And getting that youth enthusiasm is the way to kill it. Without that, then Corvette guy stigma just keeps living on and on. Let's see. Spock's saying, I have a feeling next summer there's going to be C8s all over the place. People love the hot new thing. Absolutely. And you might see a whole bunch of GT500s still in dealerships. Oh, another good point. Dim Boy's saying, Ford's issue with the 500 is the price is too high. Hell, they're charging 10 grand for stripes, and that's in limited colors. Yeah, it's nuts, man. Then they revealed the car in January or February, but we didn't get the price or horsepower and torque numbers until a month ago. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who was in charge of the release of that car, but it was so fumbled that, I mean, I'm a huge fan of GT500s from, you know, the previous generation, and I lost interest. I forgot about the GT500. That's how interested I was, and that's how much that car captured and kept my attention. Isn't that sad? Oh, John saying he's a big exotic car YouTuber, has a stable of dozens and like 1 million subs. Yeah, well, I'd like to have 1 million subs. I wouldn't know what to do with 1 million subs. Shmi 150, I guess is what he's called. Trans checking in saying, do you think the C8 will still be obtainable to the average Joe after dealership markup? Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, there might be some initial added tag on those cars, but yeah, I don't see that acting out for very long. This is a long-term deal, and you'll see the same, you know, rough discounts on Vettes that you've always seen with them. Once these things, you know, once the heat dies down a little bit, you know, you'll see it. You'll see it die down, and people just be buying Vettes like the way they've always bought Vettes. Let's see, Dr. Dip saying a shot of Patron. Good stuff. For the new C8, cheers. Good job, guys. Seems like they did the right thing, and it's getting popular. Going to be a fast platform. Curious of how the quarter will go, being more of a top end car. Man, it'll be reeling folks in. I'd love to see what that thing does in the mile. I would, if I ever did buy one, I would set it up for half mile and mile racing. I'd do quarter mile just for fun, but I would seriously be attacking mile and half mile events with that car. Symphonic saying only small dealerships will charge a markup. If they mark it up, find a new dealership. Absolutely. Oh yeah, Average Joe, we got that one. And then boys saying they killed their own buzz and they pissed off a lot of people by not giving them a proper gear shifter instead of giving them a little spin dial shifter thingy. Right there with you on that. A little twisty thing. John is saying Gladiators at below sticker now. Yeah, they are. And they're still selling well, so don't think the mass-produced Vet will hit too hard, unlike the limited edition cars like GT350 and 500. And let's think about that for a second. The limited number of GT350s, funny how they seem to keep making them. Also, funny how now there's quite a few of those things sitting on dealer lots. And dealers are saying, oh, well, we'll sell them at sticker, and they're still sitting in the dealer showrooms. Yeah. How does that taste, Ford? I can't sell a GT350 because you have a GT500 coming out. Oh, yeah, and then the C8 decides it's going to drop and do it in a better fashion than you did within months of your new Halo GT500. Here comes the C8, rips your thunder, basically walked up to your girl at the club, jerked her off the bar, and drug her back to its place with you standing there wondering what happened. That's exactly what happened, Ford, and I hope this serves to be a lesson to you, man. I cannot imagine the backlash that's going on over at Ford now. I'm waiting for somebody, and I don't know how to do this, but if you do know how to do this, send it to me. You know that that Inglourious Bastards Hitler scene where they got Hitler and it puts the fake translation at the bottom with him freaking out and screaming? That has got to be coming soon from Ford with the new C8 Corvette. Can't wait to see that one come out. Dr. Div saying absolutely, quarter will be fun, but standing mile would be epic. Oh yeah, for sure it would. Dimboy saying, yeah, the C8 basically killed the 350 due to the price and specs. For sure it did. AZ's checking in saying, I love it. This chat is supposed to be about GM product, but half the question's been about Dodge. Yep. Once again, Mopar steals the show and also rules the blacktop. Well, it's funny that so let's be honest here. It's because of the Vet that we had the Viper, right? And it's everything about the GT500. It was supposed to go out and Venom kills demons, and Venom, the GT500 will give the red eye a black eye, and it's gonna be serving up kitty cat with a side of green beans and all this other shit. Look, man, GT500 has already been straight up slapped upside its head by the C8. Everybody over at Mopar is just kind of sitting back and laughing at the GT500. Corvette is smirking all the way to the bank. And the funny thing about it is that Mopar still sits back, looks at its arsenal, and goes, we're not even in this fight. And this is great. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And in this case, C8 is kicking the crap out of the GT500, not only in publicity, but in execution and in what seems to be a performance envelope that is not only much more broad, but considerably more deep. At GT500, nobody with a red eye is half concerned about a GT500 at the drag strip. So it's like Ford just can't win for losing here. But yeah, it always ends up turning back around in Mopar, doesn't it? So Symphonic saying C8 is making people do weird things. Stay Mode had to make a video test driving a C7 because he's got the fever now. Yeah, didn't he, wasn't he saying he's already ordered his GT500? Yeah, we'll see about that. We'll see what actually ends up in his garage. James checking in saying, what's going on, brother? What's going on, James? John's checking in saying, Ford aimed at the wrong target. Really, they were sniping at the charged Camaros and the Hellcats. Didn't see the Vette flanking them. No, not only did they get outflanked by the Corvette, yeah, they really did they hitched their horse to the wrong wagon. Going up against the ZL1 is really not a good idea if you're Ford, mainly because, well, you do have the Corvette to contend with. And at that price point, which I'm sure are thinking was just a swell price point, just north of what your GT350 is selling for, I don't know. If I'm a GT350 owner, I'm thinking I got fleeced, because a GT500 with all the stuff that comes on a GT500 is only a tick more expensive than your GT350 that's a naturally aspirated car? Kidding me? So now I'm pissed if I'm a GT350 owner. So now not only did Ford get outmaneuvered by GM and by a certain extent Mopar with the red eye, it also succeeds in failing by pissing off existing owners of a GT vehicle. Could you imagine? I'll go so far as to say this. If you want a fantastic deal on a GT350 or GT350R in just a few short months, visit any of your local Chevrolet dealerships. I'm sure that their used car lot will be infested with GT350s that have been traded in on C8 Corvettes. Dr. Div saying, can't wait to get mine. I want a black on black on black. I like it. John saying, Brian, swear I'm typing my responses before you talk. That's awesome. Them boys running saying, so who do you think will rule once the Z06 and Z01 for the Chevy C8 comes out? Dodge, Chevy, or Ford? Well, damn good question. It's going to be tough. But if history repeats itself, it's going to be tough to beat that Vette. It's going to be real tough to beat the Z51. So, not sure, but I can tell you this. It's going to be fun to watch. Chances are it'll be a race just like it always has been. Mopar will get out way early. It's going to be up to the Vette to reel it in if it can, and that Vette driver is going to have to be really good on the light. I have a feeling that the Mopar will win at the end of the quarter mile, with the Vette reeling it in on the big end with a higher mile per hour. That's just my crystal ball. Let's see. Dim saying, man, that's what's crazy. Ford was worried about the Demon. They got backdoored by the Vette, and the GT500 still can't compete with the Demon nor the Red Eye. That's exactly right. Xcash is saying, feel sorry for the Ford GT owners. Hey, listen, you know, the funny thing about that is, so the Ford GT is sitting in a unique position. It's lighter and it has more power. It's 10 times the price, at least, of the Corvette. And does anybody even remember that car? Isn't it funny how it took an hour and 42 minutes worth of me talking about the Vette for somebody to bring up the GT? I mean, seriously, think about that. Nobody is talking about the GT. Doesn't even come into context here, does it? I mean, yeah, I guess it's a mid-engine car. It's got the DSG style transmission. Cost a crazy amount of money, and yeah, it does really well, and it did okay at Le Mans, but oh yeah, SCCA Racing, Le Mans prototype, not prototype, but Le Mans GT2 and GT3, yeah, that's been a Corvette and Viper staple, at least while everybody was out, and that was a big deal. Could you imagine those two going at it? What's worse is, can you imagine the C8 going out and housing the Ford GT? Be on the lookout. Don't be surprised if that starts to happen. And then don't be surprised when that new style, you know, the Z06 style hits the street. Not only will people remain, I don't know, blissfully unaware of the GT, if not by the fact that they knew about it before and have forgotten it, and that's made them unaware, but you just don't see any of them, and the Corvette will get all the pub and all the street cred. And if you see a GT, you just won't happen to know what it is, if you see one at all. Let's see. Dimboy saying RP Productions a week ago was running a special at his Chevy dealership on trade-ins for Mustangs. I bet he was. Symphonic saying, imagining a wide-body C8 with a 5.5 DOHC twin-turbo V8 that will be in the Z06. Drools. Me too. Dr. Div saying, what engine is in the GT? It is an EcoBoost. It is a 3.5 liter making 650 horsepower and an amount of torque. I don't know, but it is lightweight. Dimboy saying, you got a point, I forgot all about the Ford GT. Wow, it never crossed my mind. The Viper came to mind before the Ford GT did. Exactly. And that's kind of my point. We're remembering a car that has been discontinued before remembering the Halo car from Ford that is currently in production. John is saying Ford GT owners aren't hurting. The exclusivity of that car means the folks that bought them, you know, folks that don't really drive them will make bank on them, or their kids will a decade from now. Ford GT is unattainable, way out of the blue collar league, is coming from Slick S550. Yeah, I guess, but see, that's part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, what happens? Yeah, I'm sure they're not hurting, at least not for money. Hell, chances are the people that bought GTs will probably be buying C8s. Why wouldn't they, right? They could, presumably. But, and it's a big but, the issue that I run into with the Ford GT is that it is unattainable for blue collar, for any collar. I mean, you've got to be way up at the upper echelon to be able to afford that type of a car. And to be honest, that's very off-putting. I mean, the original GT wasn't that kind of money. I mean, it was expensive for sure, but it wasn't $500,000 expensive, not even dollar adjusted. So yeah, I mean, you look at it from the standpoint of it's so aloof. It just kind of walks in lockstep with what the GT500 was. Yeah, you get the sense that there's this overdeveloped sense of entitlement on the part of Ford, where the GT500, it's Shelby. Of course it's going to do well. It's going to sell well. That argument only holds water if the C8 doesn't exist and you're banking on tradition to sell your car. Corvette is doing something completely different. They're relying on a new buying demographic, this new youth market, and a market of people that are interested in an exotic flair type of a car versus a traditional muscle car, which the GT500 isn't, because it comes with the wrong transmission and you only get one option, and it's a DSG. It just drives me nuts. Anyway, let's keep talking about the Vet. I don't want to get too far off track. I know we can't talk about the Vet without talking about GT500, the GT, potential Viper, the old Viper. I know we can't, but it's the Vet's time to shine, man. John saying you'll see a C8 getting big gulps at your small town 7-Eleven. You might go a lifetime and not see a Ford GT with your own eyes. Very true. P-Stack, my muffler bearing is loud. What oil should I use? It's a Ford baby oil, of course. Dr. Diff, WTF, mate? EcoBoost, what the hell? Not even a V8? So they need to EcoBoost that 5 liter and let it eat. Yeah, we've been saying that for a while. Triple Thread saying, speaking Ford has the Mustang fixed. The engine tick, the typewriter tick is what he's talking about on the most recently released cars. Haven't heard much about it lately. And hey, Triple Threat, no, they haven't. That's all that anybody ever talks about. In fact, Racer X, when he was out looking for a new car for his wife, they were looking at the Mustangs, and he was running into buyback Mustangs a lot on Ford lots. So there you have it. Dimboy is saying the Ford GT doesn't appeal to the common market. That's the issue with the GT500. Ford has gotten away from what made them an affordable price pony/muscle car for everybody. Very true. And another thing to take to the bank with that is you know, these modern muscle cars, sports cars, and this is something we can talk about here because it does pertain to the Corvette. You know, we talked about concerns of durability before in the video or in this chat here, and we've talked about my concerns about durability long term with the Vette and the fact that it's been so durable leading into this. That's been the hallmark of the Corvette for years now, is that it was just durable. It was literally pickup truck durable because it was, well, running around with the same running gear aside from heads and cam differences as the truck. I mean, it was that durable and easy to maintain. Will the new Corvette still carry that lantern? I'm not really sure. But when you start to look at, you know, the perceived durability issues of the Mustang GT, both with the typewriter tick, transmission failures, rear diff failures, you start looking at the Mopars, they, especially the Hellcats, they're built like tanks. Yeah, they're heavy, but they make a lot of power, and you just don't hear of them breaking down, at least not at the rate that you would hear of some of these Mustangs. Now, granted, again, these are very low failure rates, but a lot of them are having this typewriter tick thing, and nobody's offered up at least a coherent solution to that problem. So by saying that, you know, will the new Vette fit into that? I don't know, the perceived durability portion of that. Will the Mustang ever become the Mustang again? That bomb-proof, durable, reliable, fun car that it's always been leading up to this 2018, 2019 situation. I don't know that it will. You know, the Mopars keep trucking along, and aside from, you know, some of the 5.7s having lifter issues and occasionally a 6.4, they're running along just great, keeping in mind that some of the MDS or the DOD, MDS is multi-displacement system for the Mopars, DOD is an acronym for displacement on demand. Chevrolet's had issues with those lifters. It's just not as vocalized, it seems, or at least it's not as localized on the forums as the Mopars have been. So, you know, it's again something to consider. But in terms of overall durability, I don't know. Time will have to tell, and I'm hoping that it's there. V-Stag is saying he's going to try the baby oil on his muffler bearing. I suggest you do. Dimboy saying, do you think Chevy will release the ZR1 at the end of the C8's life like they did the C7? I hope not. I'd like to see him have a 4-cam version V8 in that thing and call it a ZR1. I'd be totally cool with that. Let's see. Slick is asking, I don't recall when the C8 will be actually in dealerships. Any idea? Probably the beginning of this coming year for 2020. So probably October, November-ish. You'll probably see production really ramp up in tail end of October, beginning of November. So somewhere around in there with cars showing up in December. Triple Threat saying, love the C8, hoping to get one in a few years. Absolutely. There's going to be some, the thing is there's going to be some teething problems. You know, another thing to consider is, you know, it's torsional rigidity, you know, how much the car resists actual twisting, you know, how strong that torsional rigidity is. Will it be able to handle any more power? That's going to be another series of questions that you're going to have to ask. And what is that going to affect in terms of how stable the car is under load if they start throwing more power at it? Obviously, they'll have all of these things worked out before they get to that point. But for you guys that are thinking about buying a C8 and then throwing a bunch of money at it in terms of picking more power up out of it, these are the things you need to be concerned with. Transmission durability, structural integrity of that monocoque body configuration. It is a target top. It's not going to have the full structural integrity. I know you can get a lot out of these things. You don't have to even have a top anymore for these things to be very, very solid. But you know, they're coming out with this setup for a reason, and that might be part of the reason why, is that, you know, the structural integrity of the platform just can't manage that big torque hit. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't have to. And maybe you don't need a supercharged version of that Vette. Maybe you do create a 4-cam version that's making 600 or 650 horsepower, put that together, again, lower torque, and you know, you don't need it. You just have it be a top-end engine rather, and just let her eat. Have some fun with it. I think that'd be a cool platform as well, and it would make it better. It could keep it very strong, a very strong handling platform. You lose all the weight with the supercharger. You're making a ton of power. You're getting this thing around a closed course quicker than you could with a supercharger. Hell, I say go for it. I think it'd be a great package. Let's see. Dimboy saying, we know Ford can make more affordable cars because Chevy has done it with a C8, and now in 2020 they have a V8 base model Camaro for around 35 grand. Yeah, and let's hope they sell the crap out of it, because if they don't, you won't be seeing Camaro for much longer. John saying Mopar's trucking along is true on another level. It's true on all levels, brother. Big, heavy, fast, brick, you name it, it applies. Let's see. Oh, Dimboy's saying about the Mustang's engine tick. It's been an issue the entire life for the S550, not to mention the MT82 has been a failure of a transmission, even back in the late S197 days. Yeah, I mean, it does have its limitations, that's for sure. They just need to get these things in a place where they're, you know, where they're actually durable again. That's all I ask. And then Ford has done nothing to address or fix the issue. Talking about the engine, yeah, I still don't know how or what the deal is. Funny though, I've heard of guys switching to whatever the oil is for the GT350. I think it's 1050 or 1040, 20, whatever. Anyway, I've heard of guys switching to that oil and it's fixed it. Oddly enough, what's funny is that with the new Coyote, it's a slightly larger Coyote now, and it uses the GT350 bore size, and that along with you know, the stock stroke of the 5.0 gave it a slight bump in displacement. I've just been kind of curious at what else was moved over from the GT350, and is that what's being affected? Is the oil viscosity? Is that what could be leading to this typewriter tick? They're just putting the wrong damn oil in the thing. It's too thin. Let's see. Christopher West saying marked up like crazy. I guess he's talking about I don't know, GT. I'm not sure what we're talking about, but yeah, both of them are marked up like crazy. Dimboy's running say, do you think a Z28 would help save the Camaro? No, not at this point. You'd have to do a lot. There would have to be wholesale changes made to the Camaro for it to even be back on par with the Mustang. Part of it is gearing in the manual transmission. If you've ever driven a manual transmission Camaro, first gear wraps out to forever. So they're just kind of sluggish feeling. There's just a lot that is left to be desired. But no, I don't think it would save it at all. Plus, they'd ask a boatload of money for it. Dr. Diff is asking, it's time to go to bed. It's midnight. Oh, it is. I got to check out too. We're almost on for 2 hours now too, guys. Good show, my friend. Want to be a part of the Moparmageddon, so just let me know where to send the money, or I can help with down payment or setup. Call me. I'll let you know. I have, it's going to be the 11th of January. So we always go that, it's the 11th, 12th, or 13th, whichever that Saturday falls on. I will send you the details. Still getting everything kind of wrapped up. I am going to limit it to 20 cars this year. So if you've got some folks that you want to be a part of it, just know that there's going to be some rules, stipulations, things like that. I will get you that info this week, my friend, for sure. Always good chatting with you. Saying, okay, Dr. Div saying, have a good night, happy birthday. Thank you very much. Today is my birthday. Thank you all very much. Thanks for taking time to visit with us during a special day. Absolutely, man. Thank y'all for hanging out with me on my birthday. Dim Boy's saying, I've got a 14 GT right now. I'm thinking of getting a C7 probably next year. Get a Grand Sport. Whatever you do, Grand Sport will carry its value far better than a Stingray will. Slick saying 5W50 for the GT350. I'm thinking that's probably the right oil to put in your Mustang. And guys, I'm going to be checking out here pretty soon. Speed Freak 93 saying, Brian, I've seen some dealers with the new 2018 Hellcat still on the lot. What price point do you think these will get down to before they sell? Below 60 grand? Nah. They'll sell at about 65, 68 is where they'll be easily sold at that point. Dr. Div saying he wants to be the first one in on Moparmageddon. Absolutely. Dim Boy saying, hey, birthday, bro. Thank you very much. Dim Boy said, okay, I'll shoot for a Grand Sport. Yeah, I mean, believe me, it's worth it. You're going to spend a little bit more money, but the look, the presence, the fact, I mean, it's believe me when I tell you, you can do more with it in terms of looks. It's a better performing platform, and whatever you do, C7 Grand Sport, love it. Z06, love it. C7 Stingray base, hate it. It's just something weird about the rear offset. I don't know. Aesthetically, it just doesn't do anything for me. But guys, we are now at 2 hours. I've got to check out. I want to thank you all very much for hanging out with me. Can't wait to see how that new Corvette does, and I am certainly looking forward to seeing performance numbers on both road track and on drag strip. I absolutely can't wait to see that thing put up against the GT500. It's an exciting time to be around these muscle cars and sports cars, especially the American stuff. It is a riot with how these things are coming along. Just the performance envelope is so amazing in this day and age. I mean, we're talking ultra super race car stuff that anybody can go to a Chevy dealership where you would buy your pickup truck. You can get basically a new American exotic. So I think that's awesome. And for whatever criticism that I have, it is strictly subjective. From an objective point of view, I think this thing is going to be a straight up cold killer. So with that being said, y'all have a great one. Have a fantastic week. And that's a wrap on this one. Adios. Oh, wait, TU said, thank you for the special live tonight. We appreciate you. Thank you, TU. Make sure I didn't miss anybody's. John saying, I tell folks, Scout wide body is the grand sport. Absolutely it is. All right, guys, that's a wrap. I got to check out.